So hey anime fans, the series name is What If Naruto Got Harem with Sonic the Hedgehog. So let's start the series. Looking at the screen from his control center in the final fortress, the evil Dr. Eggman declared, "Ho ho ho ho. This is perfect. With the gun troops retreating, Station Square will be mine and then the world." His egg fleet was approaching the coast of Station Square when the Guardian Unit of Nations arrived to defend, but they were totally overwhelmed by Eggman's artillery. The backup choppers and jets began to retreat, leaving clear skies that allowed Eggman to approach Station Square without encountering any opposition. "Hey boss. A blue aircraft is approaching the fleet directly from the north," Orbit said from his position. "Give me a better picture of it, I'm positive I already recognize it." Eggman smirked, relieved that his only threats appeared on a silver platter for him to discard, as he glared at the screen, which in 2 seconds of enhancement displayed a blue biplane that resembled the Tornado 2. "You idiots surely wish to die, don't you? Take a look at this unbeatable battleship armada that was created by a genius. Its might is unrivaled in the entire universe." Eggman addressed them via the ship's fleet speakers. "Fire, all ships." Eggman gave the order, and his fleet fired at the tornado with all of its combined firepower, causing it to burst into a blazing ball. "Hovo hovo. Team Sonic, goodbye." "Hi there, Eggmanland." Eggman immediately grabbed his cameras to zoom in and observe what caused the sudden explosion on the deck of the swordfish ship next to the final fortress. It turned out to be Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles. Cubit scratched his head and murmured, "I think we missed them, boss." Eggman only grimaced. "Alright, Eggman, let's start the celebration." As they sped down the deck of the enormous swordfish-shaped ship, Sonic yelled. The turrets next to them all attempted to fire at them, but as they all sped past the large bullets, the ship began to explode behind them due to the significant damage to the outer shell, and they all leaped off to the next battleship as it approached them, diving down. "We'd best not fall now that we have no ride," Knuckles remarked, observing the clouds underneath him rather than the other way around. "This is nothing, come on." Unfazed by the miles of height they were skydiving in, Sonic remarked, "Let's keep going." In order to avoid being stopped by the many Egg-Hawk jets swarming toward them, they landed on one of the fuel pump lines, grinding quickly. "We are the target of the artillery." They sped past them and spun, dashing through a few egg ponds trying to stop them from advancing, but as they got closer to the edge of the ship, the other ships steered away from the boarded ship so they couldn't just jump onto the next one. Tails quickly thought of a solution after noticing an unused turbine fan protruding near them. "Watch for those target markers," Tails told them as they landed on the deck of the next ship with its floor glowing red. "While we all cling on it to ride to the next ship, Sonic, create a tornado by that fan." "Good idea, Tails." They all hung on tight as they flew up off the doomed battleship. Anti-airships moved into position next to them and fired their machine guns at them as they flew by, sending large cannonballs at them. Sonic said, creating his blue wind tornado beneath the fan, and he leaped up, grabbing onto Tails' legs and Knuckles. "We're being fired upon. As we move up, Tails, avoid the gunshots." Seeing the approaching artillery, Knuckles remarked. Tails gave a groan and spun his tails quickly to get them past the big bullets. "It's here. Go down." Tails obeyed when Knuckles warned him, whirling his markings and directing them downward and away from the cannons this time. "Come on. One of the major ones that can bring us closer to the doctor is up ahead." They were about to be struck by another enormous swordfish-shaped ship, but Tails swung them higher and landed them on the ship instead. This time, however, cannons were positioned across the deck to prevent them from moving forward. "Can you smash out those cannons that are obstructing us, Knuckles?" As they leaped over the cannon fire, Tails inquired. "I'll ruin them all, hee hee." After Knuckles yelled and charged directly at the cannons, shattering their metal armor as if it were glass, Sonic used his boost attack to turn it into a completely destructive projectile. Sonic grabbed Knuckles and Tails' arms as they charged directly into the ship's core, causing it to explode. They rode the explosion out of the ship, flying straight into the sky to the largest ship of all with Eggman's one down. "And we're on our way to you, Eggman," Sonic stated resolutely. "They're getting near, boss. I doubt we'll be able to prevent them from entering." Cubit said anxiously, "All right, let them come. If they get it through the welcome celebration, I'll give them a surprise." Eggman grinned menacingly and said, as he left the room, Eggman stated, "Keep them me posted on their progress, I'm going to prepare my master weapon hee 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 ha." Leaving a bewildered Orbit and Cubit staring at one another. "Alright, let's go, folks." They landed on a yellow power line grinding up on one of the slabs of the giant ship, and when they reached the edge of the building top, Tails would fly, Knuckles would glide, and Sonic would airboost towards the next platform to continue on. Sonic yelled as he leaped down, feeling the rush of wind on his face. Tails and Knuckles, behind him, leaped down, speeding towards Eggman's headquarters while they glided, hovered, and air boosted away from the firepower being directed at them. "Dudes, go down." When a huge robot that resembled a humanoid or hawk with a big cannon-shaped right arm and a left shield arm landed in front of them, Knuckles screamed and grabbed Sonic and Tails to stop them from moving further. "That is the E-2000, isn't it? Time for a party, hee hee," Sonic exclaimed as he charged at it in an attempt to homing attack, but it deflected Sonic back with its shield. "Sonic, leave this to me." The E-2000 skidded back off the edge as a loud clang sounded, and Knuckles muttered, coming up to it with his fist lifted. It raised its shield to protect itself from Knuckles' punch, much like it did with Sonic. "Well done, Knuckles." Tails spoken, however, 3 seconds later, a jet that resembled it glided up and shot them all back with a powerful pink laser blast. "Yes, good job, Knucklehead. We must now battle it in jet form," Sonic stated as he stood up. "If we stick to our previous flying configuration, I believe we can manage it," Tails stated as he flew up and extended his hands to them. The electrically charged Allied projectiles were directed directly at the Egg-2000, with the first shot stunning it and causing it to drop its shield, and the second shot passing through it and causing it to explode in a fiery explosion. "If you say so, Tails," Knuckles said, grabbing onto Sonic's legs as he grabbed onto Tails as they transformed into a living flying tower in the air. Tails then kicked Sonic and Knuckles directly at the robot with his Thundershoot. "Good idea, Tails. To put an end to this, let's now locate the flagship cores." They proceeded to use the power lines and hop from platform to platform until they reached the cores, blowing away the protective barricades that were preventing them from reaching Eggman's control center, Sonic stated. "From here, it should be easy sailing to Egghead." As they soared through the air toward the control center, Sonic uttered these words to his teammates. "Don't get too comfy, Sonic, Eggman's bound to have something in store for us," Tails replied. "Humph. If he does, I'll smash it with my fists," Knuckles declared with assurance. As they approached the Eggman-shaped eye window, they launched a spin attack through it, causing the glass to break innocuously as they passed. Orbit and Cubit were inside, holding each other in amazement at their arrival. "All right, you guys, where's Eggman?" As Sonic approached them and jabbed his finger at their skulls, "You blue little pest, I'm right following you." Eggman's voice came through what sounded like speakers, and a huge gray and orange robot with orange three-spiked fingers and a gray jetpack holding it floating appeared through the glass windows of the headquarters. The robot's head resembled Eggman's, and it was grinning broadly as it glared at them. "Look! The Agrobo ZX Super! I will annihilate you all with it, powered by the Master and Chaos Emeralds." Sonic, you can't defeat this again without the Chaos Emeralds. Eggman stated that the control room will be blown apart with explosions occurring inside when the robot's eye beams were fired at it. Wahahaha! I finally got the rodents out of my house. Eggman laughed triumphantly as he said, You believe that defeating us would be that simple? Behind Eggman on the ship's deck, with Orbit and Cubit in his arms and Knuckles and Tails by his sides, Sonic uttered, Oh no! How could I have missed it? Eggman roared in rage and hurled his spiked robot hands at them, but they all split apart to avoid the oncoming assault. Catch, Eggman! As the robots flew through the air into the cockpit of the window Eggman had opened for them, Sonic yelled, hurling Orbit and Cubit at the screaming robot's eyes. We were in there too, boss. Together with them, you could have blown us up. Eggman nearly shoved them aside and continued attacking his adversaries, Orbit stated. Humph. Stop it. Tails, Knuckles, Sonic. It's time to meet your creator. I'll demonstrate what true evil looks like. Eggman remarked as he launched a multicolored laser from his robot. Fortunately, nothing critical in the enormous battleship was struck, allowing the squad to swiftly avoid the blast with Sonic's assistance, sending them behind the machine and through the final fortress. Guys, this is it. Don't keep things to yourself. Sonic stated earnestly, All right. Tails shouted while putting on a brave front. Don't worry. Knuckles raised his namesakes and said, I'll strike the front, Knuckles. While we divert it, Tails dumped bombs on it from above. While he was distracted, Knuckles came up with a punch attack in power formation, with Sonic spinning connected with his fist boosting his punch. The robot was forced back from the attack, crashing into one of the many control towers of the ship. Eggman turned his attention from Tails to Sonic and Knuckles, sending his robot's fist at them while they were still in the air, sending them back onto the ship's surface. Sonic said, and they all nodded. Mohahaha. Put an end to your pointless attempts. Hovering above Sonic and Knuckles, Eggman gloated, You'll just make fools of yourselves. I'm not ready to give up yet. Tails said that by hurling fake ring bombs at the robot's jetpack, causing it to malfunction and collide with the ship's deck in front of Sonic and Knuckles, Tails, that's the spirit. As he assisted Sonic in standing up, Knuckles remarked, Yes. Doc, I believe you have that phrase backwards. Sonic clenched his fist and said, I won't go down so easily. Eggman shouted through the speakers, launching his robot back into the air while still smoking a little. Eggman was ready and stopped Sonic and Knuckles from attacking the robot with his fists, but this gave Tails another opportunity. With all of his strength, he slammed his tails at the robot's head, causing Eggman to momentarily lose control and giving Sonic and Knuckles the opportunity they needed. Knuckles remained motionless on the ground, glowing red, while Sonic began spinning around in place and began to glow cyan. Are you ready? Sonic turned to face Knuckles, who had a cyan aura surrounding his body, and asked. Knuckles answered, When you are, his red aura gleaming brightly. Leave! Sonic shouted. Both of them took off at extremely high speeds, attacking the robot so quickly that Eggman had no time to defend himself. Knuckles repeatedly struck the robot with his fist as he glided through the air, and Sonic homing attacked it at extremely high speeds. The robot began to spark all over its armor, and it was permanently sent back to the ship's deck. It appears that we were the party's stars. Sonic gave Tails and Knuckles a high five while cheering and leaping into the air. We three are invincible. Tails applauded as it circled them. Knuckles said, I didn't even break a sweat, as he rubbed his nose. Now all we gotta do is stop this fleet by destroying the ship's core, Tails stated. It's not finished yet. Unruly idiots. full power to all systems. The squad was astonished to see the Super Egg Robo ZX flashing yellow as Eggman spoke. Did he simply employ super transformation? Sonic shouted with bewilderment. Tails cried, impossible. No way. With its mechanical claws pointing directly toward Team Sonic, the Super Egg Robo ZX began to gather energy. Eggman paused his onslaught to give them a minute to make up their minds. You idiots, it's too late. If you avoid this beam, Station Square will be whipped off the map, unless you all would rather take its place, he said. The group debated over the choice, but Sonic snapped out of it and remarked, neither. Sonic said, instantly turning yellow and becoming supersonic because of his strong positive energy and proximity to the emeralds. We're going to take you down right now. Come on guys, let's do this. Tails said, shining, I'm with you, Sonic, as he transformed into Super Tails with 4 super flickies. As a pink aura flashed around him, Knuckles began to shine and transform into Super Knuckles. Let's see what you got, Eggman. As Sonic and his group launched beams of red, yellow, and blue chaos energy directly at Eggman, they exclaimed, Sonic Heroes Blast Wave. With the intention of whipping the squad off the face of the planet, Eggman yelled, take this, and directed the rainbow-colored beam at them. The two beams engaged in a standoff that was evenly matched until Eggman's machine circuits began to malfunction and it was unable to draw out continuous power. As his beam ceased and the Sonic Hero's blast wave devoured his machine, sending him, Orbit, and Cubit falling out of the machine into the deck as his robot destroyed, Eggman cried out, no way, I can't believe this. Sonic smirked at him as he reached out to seize him and exclaimed, this looks like checkmate, Doctor. Pointing at the city below, Tails exclaimed, Sonic, look. With that robot out of commission, we are about to make the entire egg fleet fall on Station Square. Super Sonic nodded to Knuckles when he remarked, we need to use chaos control to stop them all. With the limited time they had, Sonic exclaimed, quick guys, do it with me. They all joined their hands and shut their eyes. Chaos control. Everyone shouted for Team Sonic to descend, but they weren't there either. The entire plummeting egg fleet that was getting close to the Station Square buildings disappeared in a blaze of light above the city. Sonic tried to stand up but felt like his head was buried in the dirt. He felt pain all over his skull, almost like when Amy struck him on the head with her hammer for refusing to marry her again. Oh no, is this the third time? When Sonic opened his eyes, he saw that he was in a green jungle with trees as high as the eye could see, with only small cracks in the treetops allowing bright sunlight to shine through. He also noticed the blue Chaos Emerald next to him. Sonic pushed himself away from the dirt, feeling fresh air blow into his face, and taking a deep breath. Hello, where am I? Were we transported to the midst of a forest by the chaos control? At least I found the others with this emerald. After picking up the emerald, Sonic glanced around, unsure of where to go first. Suddenly, a boom sounded close by, giving the impression that an earthquake had occurred nearby. What was that? Wow! I'm positive I can see where it was from above. Sonic jumped up the trunk of a tree and ran all the way to the top. As he peered around, he noticed a billowing cloud of smoke from what appeared to be a settlement in the distance. It appears that I won't be bored. Let's go now. Sonic leaped down and began traveling at 400 miles per hour in the direction of the village ahead. After 2 minutes, he arrived at the village's front door and saw people rushing by him as he stood in front of the damaged entryway. As he went outside, a random person exclaimed, "Help! Puppets are seizing the village." That clarifies the situation. A man wearing a black cloak with clouds stood in the middle of the village center, surrounded by a large number of eerie puppets. The puppets were chasing away anyone who got too close to them, and Sonic saw one of them about to stab a young woman who had fallen to the ground as it pursued her. Sonic ran further ahead to the direction the villagers were fleeing and entered what appeared to be the center of the village. "No, you don't." The woman thanked him and fled with the others when Sonic shot off like a bullet with homing attack, shattering the puppet to bits. The other puppets saw that one of their fellows had been destroyed and went after the blue hedgehog. Sonic said, assuming a combat stance, "So, you guys wanna play? Bring it on." The puppet master looked from the fallen guards he had just finished eliminating to the blue hedgehog. Wondering how long the hedgehog would survive, the puppet master mumbled, "Well, it seems another fool wishes to fight my eternal art." Sonic just smirked before dodging all the projectiles aimed at him while making taunting poses at the puppets. When the storm stopped, perhaps because they were running out of ammunition, Sonic stopped his final pose of lying down as if he was tired. The puppets all fired their poison-coated sebum at the hedgehog, expecting him to be a bleeding pincushion from the rain of steel. Sonic responded, assuming a sprinting stance, "Well, it looks like it's my turn now." Another pair attempted to dive bomb him from above with their swords aimed directly at him, but were made target practice for Sonic's leaping up and homing attack from the sky. Sonic ran faster than the wind, tearing through the puppets and shattering them all to pieces. A little let down, Sonic leaped down and looked at all the puppets that had been destroyed. Sonic smiled at the puppet master and said, "Ah, is that it? Oh well, puppets are more fragile than robots after all. Why don't you stop messing with this village now before I kick you out?" The puppet master laughed and then threw a steel tail at the arrogant hedgehog. Sonic leaped at the last second, landing on the tail, and ran toward the puppet master, punching him in the face with such force that the puppet master grunted and crashed into an abandoned building. Sonic got up and looked at the smoke, wondering whether that was the end of it. As though worried that he had wounded the man too much, Sonic said, "Hey man, are you alright? I think I overdid it a little, haha." The hedgehog barely bowed backward to avoid the surprise attack after a clubbed fist was hurled towards him from the crash of smoke. The puppet master on 4 legs emerged from the smoke, his robe ripped, exposing a demonic mask-shaped shell that explained the cause of his humped back. The puppet master shouted in a deep, gruff voice, "You little pest, I'll shut you up permanently with my puppet Hiroko," Sonic replied, rolling up into a spin ball and rushing toward the invention known as Hiroko. "Oh good, you're not as fragile as the other puppets, now let's have some fun." Hiroko used its tail to defend, but Sonic was quicker and collided with the puppet once more, sending them flying through a second building. Sonic jumped back from the puppet's tail swipe and looked at it, noticing that its arms had broken off in the second impact. Hiroko spoke the words, "Grr, you insolent pest," as it struggled to stand. Sonic shrugged at Hiroko and said, "What's wrong? You look pretty tired out for a puppet." The puppet's eyes were filled with hate as it glared at him. The irate puppet said the words, "That will be the last time you mock me, pest," before collapsing and a new person sprung away from it, clad in a black robe. The figure, whose face was uncovered to reveal a young redhead who was far less terrifying than Hiroko, murmured in a youthful voice, "I have to say, you're quite impressive." As Sonic prepared to destroy the next puppet he would display, he asked, "So you're finally shown yourself, huh?" The young, red-haired man produced a scroll and unraveled it. In a puff of smoke, a new puppet hovered near him, appearing far more human than the others. This piece was the most difficult to acquire, but that's what makes me so fond of him, Sonic observed, viewing this one as only another puppet. "Nice craftsmanship, too bad he's gonna end up like the others." "So you don't know who this is?" "This is the third Kazekage of Sunagakure, the strongest of all the Kazekage, and am the one who killed him, Sasori of the Red Sand," stated the one now known as Sasori. "Now I really must get rid of you before you get involved in my group's plans again." When Sasori twitched his finger, the puppet's armholes opened, exposing paper tags with text on them. Sasori put his hand forward, launching his invention ahead, saying, "Well then, shall we begin?" Sonic said, "Okay. Let's do it," as he charged at the puppet at supersonic speed. In the interim. Oh no, Sonic? The little fox looked around and saw that he was in what appeared to be an alley with a dumpster crammed to the side. A two-tailed orange cartoon woke up with a minor headache but nothing major. We must have been randomly transferred by the chaos control. Hopefully, we are not too far from our homes. Perhaps we all ended up in Station Square? Tails stood up and looked around before leaving the alley and entering a street with people walking along the path. The people stared at him strangely as if they had never seen a two-tailed fox before, which they probably hadn't, and they avoided him. Tails questioned why they were acting that way. Normally, people would recognize him from the numerous news reports about him and his brother Sonic saving the world. Perhaps we were transported to a distant location, which is why no one has identified me. They are behaving as though I'm a monster. Tails sighed as he attempted to approach a few people to inquire where he was, but they fled or retreated when he approached. I suppose I'll have to find out for myself. People began asking, "How is he doing that?" as Tails began spinning his trademarks and flying in the air, shocking everyone. Or, "That's not possible." The buildings didn't look familiar from any atlas or globe he had ever learned, and they seemed to be a blend of Japanese and Chinese culture. He giggled a little at their reactions and flew high enough to get a bird's-eye view. Above him, he saw a massive tree in the middle of the village that was larger than any tree he had ever seen. Maybe we landed in Asia or Japan, which would account for the architecture. Tails heard a shout coming from behind him as he was inspecting the structures. "Hello?" When Tails turned around, he saw a girl in the air directly behind him with a big smile on her face. Her outfit looked like something someone would wear to a convention, and she had spiky mint green hair with a clip that matched her orange eyes. What was most odd, though, was that she was flying with a pair of insect wings coming from behind her hips. The stranger, who was now known as Fu, remarked, "Hi, my name's Fu, what's yours?" as she drew nearer with her wide smile. The fox responded, still perplexed as to how she had wings to fly, miles per hour, but you can call me Tails." With suddenness, she inquired, "Wanna be friends?" With a, "sure I don't mind" expression, Tails extended his hand to shake hands. Tails' perspiration fell at her overreaction as Fu began to fly and celebrate while circling like a rocket and nearly crashing with her several times. "Excuse me." Fu halted his swift flight and faced him. His new acquaintance asked, "HM? What is it, best friend?" Tails asked, "I was wondering if you could tell me where I am. This village doesn't look familiar to me at all from anywhere on the globe," as he continued to be amazed by the settlement's enormous tree, which he had never heard of before. Fu pointed at the waterfall across the street and remarked, "In Takigakure, DUH. What other village has waterfalls like ours?" Tails requested, "What country is it in?" Because it still doesn't ring a bell, while continuing to name every nation he had ever researched. Fu began tapping her head to help her recall the lessons she had learnt in the academy. She rubbed the back of her head and added, "The land of fire." "That's it." I remembered it after all," with the same smile. Tails was still perplexed because he had never heard of the land of fire before. The land of fire? Unless we landed in another realm again, I've never heard of that country. Perhaps if I question the village chief, he can explain. "Hey, Fu, can you tell me where the village leader is?" "I think he can clear up my confusion," Tails replied. Fu tapped him and took off, saying, "You'll have to play tag with me first." "You're it," as he flew up towards the enormous tree. "Sure. But first." Tails perspired, but he quickly left to ensure he wouldn't lose her in this strange environment. Somewhere else. A red echidna was scaling a mountainside rock when he came to the top of a ledge and noticed a little fissure inside the mountain. He punched the fracture, which caused it to disintegrate and create a larger hole. He then reached inside and extracted a tiny, green glow crystal. It's unbelievable that the Master Emerald broke once more. The echidna gave himself a furious snarl. At least I have one ahead of me. Perhaps Tails can create a Master Emerald shard tracker to speed things along once I locate him. Knuckles stored the shard in his dreadlocks and began concentrating to locate the next one. He felt it was 5 miles distant on top of another mountain. After mentally noting the position, he set off running and began to glide in that direction, soaring over a few lesser mountains. When Knuckles arrived at the designated spot where the emerald shard was, he noticed a man meditating while holding it in his hands. He became enraged that someone had placed the emerald shard in front of him. Knuckles landed a few feet behind him and cried, "Hey guy! Give me that shard, it doesn't belong to you." Knuckles got a better look at the man as he turned around. He was nearly as tall as Big the Cat. He donned crimson armor of some kind that covered his entire body save for his eyes, giving him a menacing appearance but not enough to frighten Knuckles away. He stared before uttering, "My name is not Guy, it's Han," Knuckles remarked. "Well Han, I need that shard for something important," holding back from rushing at him to get it. After placing the emerald fragment in his pocket and adopting a stance, Han remarked, "Humph, if you want it, then come take it from me, Porcupine." That clever comment now has Knuckles furious. He rushed at the armored man, determined to retrieve the shard at whatever costs, saying, "All right, but you asked for it." Sasori swiftly had his puppet separate its arm and float into the air away from the spiky blue blur as Sonic dashed across the hundreds of hands attempting to grab him and approached the puppet with the intention of breaking it like the others. Sonic looked up as the puppet was raised and noticed an opening to Sasori. The puppet master flipped back to his feet and sent his creation dive bombing to the Hedgehog, while Sonic cartwheeled away from a stab of the puppet's sword and kicked it away, sending it crashing into Sasori and sending him tumbling in the dirt once more. He ran swiftly to him, denying him the opportunity to move. Sonic yawned and muttered, "I have to admit, this one isn't very special." Sasori stood back up and raised his puppet using his threads. Sasori created a hand seal and said, "I'll show you special." The sand rose into the air above them like black clouds as the former Kazekage's mouthpiece opened and a black, grainy substance floated out of it. The puppet closed its mouth, signaling that it was done, and Sonic was looking up and tapping his foot in anticipation of something exciting happening. Is something supposed to happen? Because if this is all Sonic was stopped when all of the sand was hurled at him in the form of bullet-like pellets. He managed to avoid the fast-moving material that caused holes in his body, and the sand rose from its impact to continue attacking Sonic, requiring him to keep dodging the black pellets. Sasori shaped his sand into thick square slabs to assault his blue opponent, saying, "That's right, keep running, but you won't be able to dodge my iron sand forever." Sonic smirked and spun dashed against the rotating iron sand, causing it to shatter against his quills. Sasori realized his opponent was reading his attack patterns with ease, almost like a game, and used the square that was meant to crush him as a boost to avoid the other one. "No problem. This is nothing compared to a certain egghead I know," Sonic exclaimed. The puppet master analyzed, "I have to end this before he gains the upper hand, with my ace, because he isn't even taking this seriously or growing weary." When Sasori combined two masses of iron sand, the fused iron sand began to spread erratically in spikes, and his puppet's heart began to pulse chakra. Iron sand, world method. Sasori completed constructing the actions of his puppet, letting the sand handle the remainder. Sonic was much faster than the spiked branches of sand, but his escape routes were being cut off. The area around him and the buildings narrowed, and Sonic felt a spike rip through the top of his shoulder as the last of the sand branches settled into the ground, toppling some buildings. He was in a small space with barely any room to move around, while Sasori stood away from the irregular cage with his puppet. Sonic jumped away from a deadly spike that was headed straight towards him, cracking the ground as it hit him. "It looks like I finally got you, and it's over," stated Sasori. Sonic began to feel dizzy and fell to one knee, his shoulder gushing blood and burning like it was on fire. "What are you talking about? This is just a scratch. I can keep." He quickly glanced around and noticed a purple liquid flowing from one of the branches. "So you finally caught on. The sand isn't only meant for skewering, it's coated in my signature poison. I made it to kill a man in 3 days, but I'm not sure on a hedgehog. Doesn't matter though, you'll die before we see." Sasori motioned his puppet to pop out a blade from its arm, then fly off to finish off his poisoned victim. Still crouched on the ground, the hedgehog remained still as the former Kazekage drew closer and closer while Sonic gained a slight glow around him, bringing out an emerald in his hand. When it was 3 feet from him ready to swing the killing blow, Sonic leaped up and spin dashed through the puppet, shattering it to small sand around them deformed, falling onto the ground unmoving. Sasori stood wide-eyed, unable to make a response as Sonic used his momentum from the spin dash and double-kicked him in the gut, sending him into an unstable building that was damaged by the iron sand. Sonic huffed, standing back on his feet looking towards where he launched the puppeteer while his glow disappeared. "How?" He had a crazy expression on his face as he repeated the question more clearly. The debris broke apart, revealing Sasori in a more contorted shape. His cloak was left in the rest of the building, and a thick steel cable was visible inside where his stomach was, along with 2 poles with 5 large blades fastened to the back of his hip and a compartment marked where his heart should be. Shouting, Sasori shouted, "How are you moving?" Sonic smirked and waved a finger at him, saying, "Sorry, that's for me to know and you do not find out." Sasori shouted and hurled a ball of fire from his hands in Sonic's direction. He quickly sidestepped the sluggish strike and ran back at him. He shot another stream of flames from his hands, causing Sonic to back away to avoid getting burned. Sasori kept shooting around him to keep Sonic from obtaining any opportunities. "You think you'll hit me again that easily?" he asked. "Well, what are you going to do now?" He persisted in burning the dirt, creating even less space around them. "His fire is nearly as high as Blaze's." Sasori saw his fire scroll explode as the remaining fire in it ran out, and Sonic continued to sprint quickly past the high-temperature blasts. "I just have to keep moving until he runs out of juice," Sonic said. Sonic screeched to a halt and said, "Don't have any more fire in you, huh?" Instead, Sasori shot a narrow stream of water, which caused Sonic to leap and step quickly out of the 2 blasts. The buildings behind Sonic were sliced in 3 by the 2 streams of water that cut through them. Sasori became impatient and questioned, "How long can you run?" Now that he was unable to shoot those broad flame blasts, Sonic began to rush towards Sasori and drew closer and closer while swerving around the high-pressure water. "Way longer than you for sure. You're finished." Sasori hurled his steel cable stinger in the hedgehog's direction. The human puppet began spinning his hip blades like 2 helicopters to begin floating in the air, but Sonic grabbed it while sliding sideways and began running around Sasori, trapping his arms. Sonic tugged while keeping his legs in position, stopping the puppet from rising any higher. With a clever question as he pulled, Sonic asked, "Where do you think you're going?" "Let me go." The rogue approached Sonic, squeezing his blades forward. Sonic whirled around, launching the puppeteer into another eroding structure instead. He emerged from the crumbled walls, his blades spinning, but his body was clearly damaged from the fall. Sonic grinned and sprinted forward, placing his arms behind him in the direction of the water, while Sasori untangled himself and unleashed 2 jets of water mixed with all of his ammunition, creating a single, enormous explosion that went straight through the fallen buildings in his path. "I've grown tired of your antics, I'm ending this now, with all I have." As he continued to run in place, Sonic collided with the waterhead and pushed it back, and Sasori began rotating his arm to increase the pressure, intending to destroy his target. "All right. Now we're talking," the blue hedgehog said, enveloping himself in a blue aura and speeding up. Sasori shouted, "Just die," and rotated his arms even more quickly, strengthening the water. "Your show is over." Sonic screamed to a halt, putting out one palm and seizing Sasori's head as he blitzed through the rushing water too quickly for the puppeteer to react, smashing through his wooden body's chest, sending the other body parts flying. And that's that. Sonic looked across the battlefield and whistled over the damage they had caused. He saw buildings that had fallen, craters in the ground, tiny patches of embers, and broken puppets all over the place. As he tossed the head into the remainder of the puppet pile, the hedgehog laughed to himself, "We really trashed this place, huh? Who can tell me where I am now that isn't a puppet?" Sonic removed the Chaos Emerald and glanced down at his shoulder, which was still dripping blood without his knowledge. "I guess I didn't heal myself enough. Oh well, I better fix this while I got the chance." Unbeknownst to him, a puppet emerged from the scratched and bruised ones he had previously fought while he closed his eyes and concentrated on the wound, using the chaos energy to seal it. A horizontal slash sliced Sonic's back as he was healing, causing his blood to fly into the air. He turned around in time to see a smiling Sasori. Tails glanced up at the sky as a chilly wind passed by. He wasn't sure why, but he had a hunch that Sonic was having problems. "Sonic, please, are you okay?" After barely 30 seconds of playing tag, the fox barged in, followed her into the trees, and pinned her against the tree trunk. "Hey! Are you going to keep staring into the sky? Or let me go?" Fu said, swinging her arms beneath him while he held her by the twin tails. "Oh, I'm sorry, Fu." Tails turned to face the herald and untied his tails. Fu inhaled deeply, astonished that they were both soft and strong enough to restrain her. With one of the fox's tails in her hands for closer inspection, Fu questioned, "How did you move that fast? Nobody has ever caught me in the air before." He swished one of his tails in response, saying, "I have trained them a lot over the time adventuring." Fu released the extra appendage, and she gaped in astonishment, eager to learn more about her new friend's adventures. While hopping in place, Fu exclaimed, "Tell me! Tell me! I wanna know!" Okay, but can you show me the way to the village leader?" "I'll tell you some on the way," Tails replied. "Sure, follow me." Fu leaped from the tree, allowing her wings to save her from falling, and Tails followed her down like a helicopter on the road, causing people to immediately run away from the strange pair. When they arrived at the large red mansion doors, 2 men stood guard at the entrance. They both wore headbands with the same symbol from Fu's armband, which Tails deduced was what shinobi from the same village were to identify their hidden village as Fu called her home. The 2 of them began walking along a trail to a mansion in the distance as Tails explained where he was from, particularly the day he first met his best friend and sworn enemy, with Fu gasping about how his life changed when he met the hedgehog, Sonic. As she and her visitor got closer, the man on the right said, "Oi, Fu, what brings you to Lord Shibuki?" Fu pointed to the fox and said, "I just stopped by to help out a friend, Kagon." "This is my new friend Tails I met. Isn't it cool how he has 2 tails?" After she plainly expressed his anomaly, Tails simply waved sheepishly, and the 2 standing guards stared for a while before shaking their heads. The left man glared down at Tails and said, "Okay, we'll let you in, but we're watching out for your little friend." Tails gulped. As Yoro and Kagon led them to the leader's office, Fu said, "Yoro, calm down, he isn't a giant vicious scary fox," as they entered the building with Tails. When the newcomers entered the room, they bowed to the young man who was sitting on a mat and writing in an unwound scroll. A little heater was warming tea, which he drank. "Lord Shibuki, Fu wishes to talk to you, and she has brought a new arrival not from the village," Kagon said. Shibuki put down his cup and glanced up from his work. "Let them in," he murmured coolly, wondering who was with Fu. Yaro shouted to the tanned kunoichi trailing behind, "Hey, Fu! Hurry up!" Fu winked and looked around the door. "Hey, Chief!" Shibuki grinned at Fu's innocent demeanor as he entered the room with Tails following her and glancing around before going back to the village leader. Looking at the two-tailed fox, Shibuki said, "Greetings, Fu, and who is this you've brought?" Shibuki nodded to him before turning to face Fu. "Hello, sir. My name is Miles Prower, but everyone calls me Tails. What is it you require, Fu?" "Tails here isn't really from around here, and he asked to see you for some questions." Tails approached Shibuki and sat down on one of the mats in front of him. Fu sat down beside him, but he was more at ease. Tails began to describe how he ended up in the alleyway from him, how Sonic and Knuckles boarded the tornado to stop Eggman from attacking Station Square, how they later attacked the Egg Fleet, and how they all used the Chaos Control to save the city, scattering him and his friends in the process. When he finished his story, everyone in the room was in awe, but Fu's expression changed to one of a grin and a shout. "You're even cooler than I thought." Tails looked down and muttered, "Hee hee, thanks, Fu, but I'm worried about my friends, they could be anywhere." In contemplation, Shibuki placed a hand to his chin. "From what it seems like, I think you teleported to this place from another world." Except for Tails, everyone turned to stare at him in astonishment. Kagon questioned, "Lord Shibuki, is that really possible?" "I'm sure he is right. I suggested the same thing to myself when I first woke up. The Chaos Emeralds have sent me and Sonic to other dimensions before. That would explain why I have never heard of chakra," Tails said as he was putting it all together. "And it would also explain why I could not sense any chakra coming from you. Every living thing in the world has chakra, even small insects, but I don't sense any from you," Yoro replied. Shibuki displayed a map of the elemental nations and stated, "Perhaps your team was transported here too, Tails. I'd suggest you go look for them where we received reports of strange wreckage falling from the sky in the Land of Winds desert lands." "Did Eggman's battleships also crash down here?" "That implies that he might be able to rebuild his ships and launch an attack if he arrives first. I must arrive before it's too late. Knuckles and Sonic can wait till I locate them. Furthermore, they'll most likely bump into me anyhow." Tails stood up and said, "Shibuki, could you please give me that map? I have to go there as soon as possible." Concerned, Fu looked up. Was her first companion after Shibuki already leaving? "He's only been here a few minutes." "Of course, would you like an escort? It can be dangerous out there without knowing the land, especially with rogue ninja running about out there," said Shibuki. Tails answered, "Yeah, it would be a little lonely to go alone." Fu instantly leaped to her feet and raised her hand. "Can I go, Chief? It would be a great chance to see the world, Fu. You know, with your status it would not be wise to go right now. The Akatsuki have already taken the 3 of the Jinchuriki. I don't want the same to happen to you," Shibuki stated with a severe expression. Tails was curious about what they were discussing, but he dismissed it as unimportant. "Perhaps it is related to her wings?" With a furious expression, Fu exclaimed, "But I want to see the outside world. I'm not some little kid anymore." Shibuki sighed. Shibuki gave Tails a commanding glance and said, "Once you make up your mind, you never give up." When Shibuki begged Fu to guard her as if he were the smaller one, Fu snorted. "Tails, can you look after her and promise to return her back?" Tails stated solemnly, "I'll do my best, it's a promise." Shibuki grinned, gave Tails his map, and glanced up at Kagon and Yoro. "I want you two to escort them to the village entrance and be careful out there," urged Shibuki. After giving him the thumbs up, Fu shouted, "All right. I'll be back before you know it," and he hurried out of the room, leaving everyone in the room sweating. "Good luck with finding your friends, stay safe," Shibuki said, turning to Tails. Tails nodded and hurried off in the direction Fu was running, followed by Kagon and Yoro. Tails caught up to Fu after following his escorts, and the two of them hurried out of the village entrance. "Hang on a bit longer, Sonic, Knuckles, I'll be there to help you guys soon," Tails said. As she went to his right, Tails warned her, "Fu, you're going the wrong way." After catching herself after falling, Fu rubbed behind her head and played it off. "I knew that, I was just making sure you were paying attention to the map, heh. It's going to be a long trip," Tails murmured. The echidna regained his balance before falling down the steep slope and turning around to see another cloud of the same steam appear a short distance away. Knuckles ran towards the armored man with a fist reeled back to punch. Suddenly, a thin burst of steam surrounded the man, making him disappear inside the cloud. Despite this, Knuckles charged forward and went straight through the hot mist, only to end up stumbling on the edge of the cliff. Knuckles replied, "Nice smoke and mirror trick, but that won't work on me again," now that he knew he could teleport. Han remained silent and made hand signals while closing his eyes. Steam release, unrivaled strength. Knuckles scoffed at the change as steam began to swirl around his crimson armor, seemingly enlarging his biceps. Knuckles came at him, and Han met him head-on this time, raising his hand to halt his fist attempt. The man's hand vibrated with the impact of the hit, grunting, but he kept his ground. "So what, you got a little buffer, that unrivaled strength is going to meet its match today." "What? Did he manage to stop me?" As he raised his other fist to attack the ninja, Knuckles thought, "I guess I don't need to hold back as much on him." Knuckles grinned proudly as Han was thrown spinning back against one of the clifftop stones and colliding with it in a cloud of smoke. Suddenly, the dust exploded in steam and a figure collided quickly into Knuckles' face. A powerful foot erupts. Han shouted, sending the echidna hurtling over the edge. Han sighed, speculating about his fellow red opponent's fate. Knuckles, however, had recovered swiftly from the powerful steaming kick and had begun slowing down his descent, gliding towards the mountain and clinging to the side with his spiked fists. He wasn't very smart to challenge me, Han thought, pulling out his crystal shard and admiring it as he turned and walked away. Knuckles buried himself in the rock, working his way up to stand in front of Han. If he thinks I'm done, he's got another thing coming. But man, does that sting. "Do you never give up?" Knuckles raised his fists, prepared to continue, and Han inquired as he put away the crystal shard and returned to his steam-covered battle position. Han merely glared and rushed towards Knuckles with a steam-powered punch, but he was prepared for this and moved his upper body to the side and performed an uppercut on him, sending him flying. Knuckles grabbed his foot before he went too far and threw him over the cliff, falling down below. "That kick was nothing," Knuckles smirked. "I'll need to increase the amount of steam," Han said, using a lot of boiling chakra to push himself from the air, back onto the mountain, and slide down to the ground safely. A little while later, Knuckles appeared, landing in front of him as though he floated down, but Han didn't question it and prepared. "Isn't it awful to be flung over a precipice as well?" Knuckles inquired. Han retaliated by running towards him with another punch, but Knuckles ducked under, only to have a knee sent into his face, knocking his head backwards and landing him with a right hook to his head. The angry echidna then launched a barrage of punches, each hitting Han's arms only as he had to step back from the force of the blows. As he continued to block, his arms suddenly whipped back from a haymaker, leaving him vulnerable to a 5-punch combo to his abdomen, which knocked him out as he skidded back. Knuckles crossed his arms and remarked, "If you just return the shard to me, we can stop this. You can't beat me with attacks like that." As more steam began to stream out of the furnace on his back, Han glanced up at him with his incessant glare. In fact, the armored man rose back up as it began to resemble an aura. "All right," Han responded, "I'll just use more chakra." Chakra what dash he was about to ask when a loud whistle sounded, so he got back up and ran towards the echidna with his newfound speed, running with the approach of a locomotive. He hit Knuckles, sending him flying into the air from the tackle and U-turning back to meet him with the attack again when he landed. Knuckles looked up and came towards him with a straightforward punch, and the Jinchuriki let out a burst of steam from his armor to stop his attack, but he rushed through it, sending him back from the blow. Knuckles ran up to him while he was down, to swing the final blow, but a sudden uppercut met his chin, and instead of being sent upward, he endured the blow, gritting his teeth as he swung his fist in Han's face, sending him rolling. Han raised himself again by using the full force of his burrowed nature chakra, saying, "This one is very strong. To think he can match the boil release with pure strength alone. Let's wrap things up quickly because this isn't going anywhere." Knuckles uttered. Han remarked, "Well, I agree, I'm giving it everything I've got." When they were about to clash their attacks, a geyser of water spouted from beneath them both, sending them both into the air. Knuckles tensed his right arm, putting all of his energy into it for a knockout punch, while Han collected his steam and circled it around his left arm to finish the fight. They both stared at each other, narrowing their eyes, before sprinting towards each other. Han's steaming tracks burned the ground black, while Knuckles' tracks left cracks in each step. As he struggled against the water, Knuckles exclaimed, "What is this? Are you doing this?" Even as he examined the spout, Han calmly stated, "This wasn't my doing." After the strange event, the spout ended, and the two landed and began to observe their surroundings rather than fight again. Two figures were approaching them from a distance, both wearing red-clouded cloaks. One had gray skin with gill-like marks on his face, small, round eyes, and a large sword behind his back. The shorter of the two had jet-black hair and coal eyes. "We have important business that requires you, Five Tails Jinchuriki," the swordsman said, grinning at Han and flashing his sharp teeth. What is meant by a Jinchuriki? And from where did these men originate? In his mind, Knuckles thought Han was about to oppose them when the Silent One's eyes turned crimson and he looked into them, affecting him. The man fell to the ground, knocked unconscious without a single hit, leaving Knuckles perplexed. "Hey, this is between me and him, you guys are going to have to wait your turn," Knuckles replied. One of the two moaned and the Silent One narrowed his eyes. "As much as I'd like to watch a fight, we're on a schedule. Now get out of the way and let the grown-ups deal with their business," the swordsman grumbled. "I am an echidna," he snarled, threateningly pointing a fist at the man. The shark-like man said, "This echidna or whatever is bothering me. You don't mind if I kill him, do you, Itachi?" Itachi closed his eyes as his eyes turned back to black. "He refuses to run away, so go ahead, just don't take too long," he said. "He's as good as dead." When Kisame went to the Guardian and raised his sword to crush his opponent, Knuckles resisted and hit the blade squarely, pushing Kisame back from the recoil. "You're stronger than you think, but raw power won't be enough to defeat me," the swordsman said, preparing to cut the echidna again, when a powerful blow knocked his blade out of his grasp. The unarmed man was questioned by Knuckles, "Now will you back off?" Kisame threw his head back, his cheeks watering. You think that I'm useless without my blade?" Water style, exploding water shockwave. Kisame's mouth hurled a lot of water, quickly soaking the parched wasteland. Itachi grabbed Han and leaped to safety atop a spire from the rising water level, while Knuckles ran against the fierce wave. A waterman after first being a steam man? This area is just getting wilder and wilder. A small ocean formed around the wasteland, making the rock spires the only land around, Knuckles thought as he ran to a rock tower and grabbed on with his fists to escape the wave. From under the sea, Kisame reappeared with his sword in hand and a savage smile. The rebellious ninja said, "Just leave here, you're powerless against my water-style jutsu." Not a chance. Knuckles ran quickly enough to sprint across the water toward Kisame and punch him in the face with a forward blow. Kisame leaned away from the attack, so Knuckles had to U-turn around for another blow. A figure emerged from the water and ran beside Knuckles, resembling a replica of the man he was facing. The copy attempted to punch the echidna, but he countered with a backhand punch to throw the clone back into the water and return his attention to the original. The shark man threw his sword into the air, performed a hand sign once more, and slammed his hand onto the water. Water style, water shark bomb jutsu. A huge water-based shark came out of the water and flew in the direction of his opponent. Knuckles stopped running and waited for the shark to approach him. The shark's jaws opened wide to swallow him whole, and Knuckles raised both of his fists to block the blow. The projectile exploded harmlessly against his guard, but Kisame grabbed his sword when it landed back down to him and lunged towards the Guardian, yelling as he did so. Using gravity to his advantage, Kisame slammed his weapon onto Knuckles' fists, with the ground giving way beneath him. Knuckles held his breath as he searched the small ocean for the opponent, who had mysteriously vanished following the attack. He saw the shark man above him, releasing sharks towards him in the water. It won't be easy to handle that many sharks while down here, Knuckles thought as he braced himself for the swiftly approaching sharks. The sharks approached him one by one, and he punched hard and quickly, shattering them as they tried to bite him. Each shark that took a punch began to regenerate inside the water and swim in the direction of their prey once more. Kisame mocked from the surface, "These sharks don't give up on their meal until they rip you to shreds." The lack of oxygen began to affect Knuckles, giving the sharks an advantage over him. Every time he missed or approached from a new direction, the sharks slammed into him. Knuckles began swimming to the top, but a shark caught him and knocked him back down the tiny ocean floor. "I need to get some air, these things aren't getting tired at all," he said. While he was thinking, another shark broke through his defenses and slammed him to the ground. "The sharks won't let me get away. I got to do something about this water or the sharks. Hold on, I got it." Knuckles smirked, baffling the sharks, who charged in regardless for the final blow as they surrounded the echidna on all sides for one last strike to finish him. Knuckles focused his energy into his fist, making it shimmer crimson, before punching the earth. "This is it, Knuckle Slam." Kisame watched the crash that ensued when the sharks suddenly surrounded their prey. He was confused as to why he noticed a red gleam, but he dismissed it when he noticed that there was no movement coming from the smoke cloud below. He turned to tell his partner about his kill, but he was distracted when a bright red wave appeared in the water. Is he still alive? Where is the source of this power? Knuckles appeared from below, showing himself from within the fiery field gliding upwards towards him. Kisame thought in horror as the water burst upward, throwing him into the air and sending chakra into his feet. He jumped upward to escape the expanding red explosion that was approaching him. "Well, I'll just take in the chakra." He anticipated to absorb the energy and send it back to his opponent as he threw his sword out into the field, but he was shocked when both his sword and arm were sent back. Kisame said, "What? It isn't chakra?" The echidna was able to get a clear shot to Kisame's stomach since the swordsman was rendered immobile by the shockwave. The shark-like man coughed out blood from the force of the blow, and Knuckles flung him and his arm down to the ocean. When he fell into the sea, Knuckles said, "It's my strength." The flaming field vanished from all around him, and he skimmed to a dry area of land. Where is his partner now that I've taken care of that shark guy? Knuckles pondered as he peered about. He saw the raven-haired man staring down at him from a distance while the body of Han was running across the water's surface. He stopped in front of him, a little worn out but prepared for round 3. Itachi's eyes flared red once more, glancing up and down before returning to normal. "You're not from here, are you? I don't see any chakra in you." Despite the circumstances, Itachi asked calmly. Itachi closed his eyes in contemplation before opening them and turning back to face the echidna. "I'm not, in fact what he has," Knuckles said, pointing to Han. "It's part of what me and my friends need to get back to where we're from, and if I don't we'll be stuck here," Knuckles continued. Itachi picked up the unconscious man and tossed him to Knuckles, who grabbed him, saying, "I'll let you take him for what you need. You don't have business with our world, but my organization requires him and we will come for him later." "Well, thanks," he said, surprised that his adversary had simply given up, but he wouldn't question it now for the Master Emerald. "By the way, what is your entity called?" After turning to go, he asked. Knuckles nodded and went across the ocean to cover as much territory as he could with Kisame before coming back to get retribution. "We are the Akatsuki. You should go before my partner gets back up," he said. Kisame emerged from under the water in a spout as Knuckles ran off with their prey, landing behind Itachi. His coat was ripped at the area where his stomach was bleeding, and he appeared to be ready to kill. Where did the echidna disappear to? I'm not done with him yet. Looking around, Kisame noticed that Itachi was unharmed and that the Jinchuriki was gone. "Where are the 5 tails?" Kisame inquired. "You don't appear to have been physically assaulted in order to lose him." Putting his blade on his back, Kisame moaned. "My genjutsu has no effect on him and I used too much chakra to take down our target to stop him," Itachi replied. Kisame, anxious to exact his retribution, remarked, "Then let's go find them." Before heading back the way they came, Itachi shook his head and said, "No, he mentioned his friends while you were away. That means there are others just like him. Beings that strong without chakra could be a huge hindrance in our plans and must be reported the leader." Kisame growled and took one last look around before following him. After running across the damp wasteland and into a forest, Knuckles paused to relax, letting Han lean against a tree. The stress of the 2 battles began to wear him down, so he stretched to relieve the pain. "Dude, these guys are tough. I don't think we've ever met guys like them. Sonic and Tails are most likely mingling with the locals while I struggle to stay alive." "I hope I can find them soon," Knuckles said, startled out of his reverie by the sound of Han waking up and jumping down from the tree. He waited for Han to completely awaken before asking him questions in the hopes that he would find it easier to get the shard back. Startled, Han turned to the echidna and asked, "Hey, you alright?" before looking around. As Han got ready for an attack, he inquired, "Where are we and what happened to those Akatsuki?" "I took care of them. I hold you here in this forest," Knuckles replied, crossing his arms. "Why?" inquired Han. "Those guys came in very hostile and interrupted our fight. I wanted the shard back but not by letting some guy get killed who didn't really do anything," Knuckles remarked as he looked aside. Han briefly glanced down at him before extracting a large green shard from his GI and throwing it to Knuckles before turning and jumping up into a tree to depart. Knuckles collected the shard, glanced up at the Jinchuriki, and then called out to him. "Hey," Han said, pausing and turning. "You won't thank you for saving my life?" With a sly smile, Knuckles inquired. The tall man humphed and replied, when he said, "We'll settle our match another time, but thanks." Knuckles nodded, and they both left. Sonic was surprised by the Hedgehog's speed. He moved faster than he had ever seen in his many missions, but he had let his guard down, a rookie mistake when facing any kind of opponent. The slash did a lot more damage than Sonic had anticipated after he moved away to avoid the next attack before falling to the ground after Sasori swung a chain to bind his legs, stopping him from dashing through him a second time. "What's wrong? Can't you just go ahead and tell another joke?" With his injured body limping over his vanquished opponent, Sasori turned to face Sonic, who was struggling to stand up and attempting to keep one eye open. "You seemed so confident you could save this village. Tell me, were you summoned here by someone?" Sonic asked. A second encounter wouldn't go as well if they knew what he could do, especially whoever was in control of this hedgehog. That's why Sasori wanted to know right now if some ninja had summoned him. Sonic, however, didn't seem to think much of this and decided to try and stall while he tried to fight against the pain. Despite the circumstances, Sonic remarked wearily and with a pained smile, "Hey, actually I wasn't, just happened to see anything going on. You can't allow some crazy guy spoil a wonderful location, right?" The Akatsuki's eye twitched as that arrogant attitude reappeared, and he responded by stomping on the hedgehog's back wound. Sonic screamed in agony as more of his blood was forced out due to the steadily rising pressure. Sasori lifted his blade to kill the hedgehog when a rock struck the back of his skull. "Even after you're on the ground bleeding out, you still won't keep your smart mouth in check. I would have liked to dissect you, but I've grown tired of you. Die," he said. "Leave him alone." Sasori turned around in rage and saw that a woman was standing far away from them. She had her arm outstretched from the rock she had thrown, and when he looked at her, she flinched. A few more people were standing behind her, holding farm equipment and other makeshift weapons, and they were standing bravely but fearfully. Sonic looked as well and gasped. In front of him was the woman he had saved earlier, and he grinned. "What are you doing, in your opinion?" "If you think I'm that weakened, you're sadly mistaken," the puppet said, turning his attention from his opponent to the audience for a moment. Before she could respond, Sasori ran towards the stupid girl who had attacked him at a pace too fast for the common people to follow, and before they knew it, he was holding the girl in the air by her throat with a dead arm. The crowd was unsure whether to approach him because he had a hostage or that they could do anything because they could see how he moved. The woman, however, was choking from the grip around her throat, unable to breathe as Sasori's lifeless eyes stared at her. "Let this be a lesson to you all," he said as he began to tighten his grip. "I'm sorry, but perhaps you should pick up a few tips." The hedgehog, who had uncurled from his ball form and was panting while he gripped the ground, was standing where Sasori was. He turned in alarm, seeing the familiar blue blur spinning into him before he was launched into the air along with broken pieces of his body. The girl he was holding fell to the ground, coughing violently while holding her neck, and he noticed that it was the hedgehog. He looked back at her with weary eyes and smiled. "You all right?" After a moment of admiration, the woman abruptly snapped to reality and said, "Forget me. You're bleeding." Along with the other villagers approaching, the woman hurried over to assist him. This mission was supposed to get people to trust the Akatsuki for missions. Now nobody will take us seriously for failing to secure that nation, Sasori said, flying through the air before a long fall that landed him in the trees. Fortunately, none of the branches pierced his core, but the damage from the last attack was too great to use enough chakra to drag himself out, and the fact that his limbs were too damaged by the fall didn't help either. "Senpai, that was a great show." With a smug expression that brought back too many memories of his own ordeal, the explosive specialist Deidara appeared through the leaves, and Sasori moaned as he laughed. "Never did I believe your timeless art would succumb to the art of the wild." Knowing that there was nothing Sasori could do, he chuckled once again. Sasori muttered, "Shut up," clearly frustrated. Deidara shrugged and made his creature pick up his partner's wounded body and put it in its mouth before driving away from the settlement. "Where are you going?" Since they weren't going back to complete the task, the shattered puppet inquired. "We have to head back. Zetsu told us of an important meeting happening and wouldn't tell me why, just said that the boss wanted us to get there as quickly as we can, angry that he wouldn't get to see the hedgehog pay for what he had done to him." Sasori snarled and made plans to kill him and make him wish they had never met again. At the hospital, Sonic was lying in bed while a nurse attended to his back wound. Fortunately, the building was one of the few that had not been severely damaged, so he was able to have it healed. "Would you like anything to eat?" When she was done, the woman inquired. "Yeah, I'll take anything right now. I'm pretty hungry after all that," Sonic said, leaning back onto the pillow to get comfortable. She nodded and said she would be right back. With a chance to gather his thoughts, he looked out the open window and thought, "Gee, the first thing I do when I get here is get into a fight. It seems like in whatever world I get into trouble, but I've never been hurt like this. Good thing Tails isn't around or he'd be worried sick and I'd never hear the end of it from Knuckles." He laughed and shook his head before hearing a knock on the door. "You can come in," screamed out before realizing it wasn't the nurse, but the same woman who had previously saved him. Instead of her usual attire, she was sporting a pink kimono, a headpiece, and other ostentatious items Sonic couldn't identify. Her father had attempted to have her blend in with the common villagers in order to get away, but their adversaries weren't that easily tricked. "Hey Sonic, how are you doing?" Standing beside with her hands behind her back, she inquired as she looked down at him sorrowfully while examining the wrappings. "Yeah, I'm okay," Sonic said, waving his hand to comfort her. "How are things doing, Princess Chio?" he questioned, glancing at her with concern. He was aware that some people had been harmed before he arrived, but he was fortunate to stop Sasori before he could reach the last royal figure in the country. She stated that she would now have to succeed her father and become the new daimyo. After a brief pause, she looked down with sorrow and said, "I'm alright, we've put out the fires and cleaned up most of the mess, but it'll still take a big effort to rebuild the nation," she said, pouting as she finished her explanation. "And I said you could just call me Chi. I also brought something for you. It's the least I can do for all you've done," Sonic said with a shy laugh and a nod. She turned to face the side, blushing a little, and held out the purple bag with the glittering ribbon. "Whoa, you didn't have to give me all this. Don't you need this for repairs?" Sonic grinned, accepted the gift, and opened it. He was shocked to see that it was full with cash, or at least that's what he thought it was. Sonic looked at her and asked. She shook her head. "No, I have plenty that can go to that, please accept it," Chio said, averting her eyes. Sonic rubbed his head and shrugged. "Thanks Chi, I appreciate it," and he gave her a wink and a thumbs up. When the door knocked again, Sonic noticed that there was a large amount of food rolled in on trays, which appeared to be enough to fill a festival. Naturally, he was shocked to see that the nurse had brought in 3 carts. "Here is your food. I hope you're hungry since the village prepared a feast as a way of saying thank you." With a smile, the nurse said, "Thanks a lot," Sonic said uncertainly as she placed one of the numerous plates on a table that was attached to his bed. "Do they really expect me to eat all this?" he asked himself, perspiring as he gazed down at his food. Chio's stifled laughter started him laughing, and he joined her in laughing. "Want to help me finish some of this, Chi?" Since he thought he might as well share some of this with someone, he offered her a fork. She gladly accepted it and nodded, saying, "Sure, I'm famished myself," and the two proceeded to their meal. Inside an unidentified place, Sasori wished that last attack had killed him even more, but fortunately it was time for the meeting, which made Deidara quiet as they entered the jutsu, to which several fuzzy figures began appearing. Deidara had made Sasori a makeshift body because he didn't know much about puppets, even when he saw Sasori working a few times. The arms and legs had to be made of clay, and he had to be careful not to move too much. The explosion artist, of course, boasted about how his eternal art couldn't survive without him. What the devil? We had finally approached our goal when we were abruptly summoned back. "Shut your mouth," a man with a big scythe yelled. The masked figure next to him, with red and green eyes, grumbled. The scythe-wielding sighed and crossed his arms. "I've called you here due to Itachi and Kisame having valuable info," the leader said, gesturing for them to explain, to which Itachi spoke first. The last figure appeared, his enigmatic spiral eyes staring at everyone in the room. Sasori looked shocked at how much the echidna resembled the hedgehog, and Deidara could see too. The leader noticed, but he remained silent for the time being to allow Itachi to continue. "There was a strange creature we encountered when hunting our target, the Five Tails. He called himself an echidna," the Uchiha said, displaying a genjutsu of the creature for everyone to see. As Sasori was thinking incredulously at the sight of that echidna, the Uchiha provided more details about the battle. He could fight Kisame to a standstill and even managed to get the upper hand at one point before Kisame planned to go all out, to which wouldn't have been a good idea due to the stone village being nearby, she said. "I'm worried about more than one," Sasori said, "and they almost did it in Kisame? This can't be," before he was stirred out of his reverie by an unpleasant member's protest. "So what, TCH? Do you really believe that we are weak enough to be kicked in the ass by an animal summon? If we spot it on the way, we'll make sure to kill it. If you would like, I can remind you of my strength," Kisame stated, staring at the member with bloodshot eyes. The commander shouted sharply but firmly, "That's enough," and the two became silent once more. Itachi scolded the scythe wielder, who rolled his eyes and ignored his warning. "Do not underestimate them. The strangest thing is it had not used any chakra and had none that I could see," Itachi added. The leader remarked, "It seems Sasori knows something as well," drawing everyone's attention to the redhead and revealing that he was not only in his real form but also kept together by Deidara's clay. "Oh, how did you fare?" Sasori asked the human flytrap inquisitively, growling and averting his eyes from them since he knew that when he informed them of the failure of his mission, his pride would be further damaged. "It was a hedgehog named Sonic.